And here's our special guest on a very special night in Australia, and in remembrance of those fallen. Normie Rowe, good evening.
Good evening, Brucey.
And Phil's here.
Yeah, hi Normie, how are you?
Of course, Phil, ooh la la.
Oh yeah, my favourite song. And of course, Remembrance Day would be so meaningful to you, of all people, Normie.
Yes, today is a very, very meaningful day. I was driving back from Locksport this morning. I did a show there last night, and at 11 o'clock, or about 5 to 11, I pulled over to the side of the road and had my minute silence just to myself. And, it does serve as a bit of a reminder, just to me, of the cost. A couple of friends of mine were killed during my service over in Vietnam, and it took me probably 34, almost 40 years for me to have the guts to go and front his mum, who was by that stage 92 years old, and she was a dear, sweet lady. And I just said, I just wanted you to know that your son was so loved by the rest of us. It was a very important thing.
Yeah.
So I had a minute to remember Keith and Bob and Bert Casey and Viv French and a few of the other guys that we lost during my time in Vietnam. And it is a cost. And what they say about the RSL says that the cost of peace is eternal vigilance, and that's true.
This is something you can put pay to. I've heard the story many times over the years that, in fact, your number didn't come out in the birthday ballot, and that it was the government's decision to send you to Vietnam for propaganda purposes, rather like Elvis in the army in Germany. Is this a true story, Normie?
Well, as far as we know, I mean, it's so hard to nail to the ground who's got the proof, and I just look at it myself and say, well, what difference does it make? It happened, and I look back at it and I think, okay, so what did it cost? What did I gain? I gained some of the best friends that I think I could ever have as a man. And at the end of the day, my dad used to say, at the end of the day, I came into the world naked. If I go out the same way, I broke even. But if I take a few friendships with me as part of the collateral of my life on the planet, then I made a pretty big profit.
Oh yes, so well said.
I was in radio, and you were off to the war, off to Vietnam. Did you feel?
Bruce, I have fond memories of you being on radio all the way back then, and of course Phil was, goodness me, he was on television so much with Graham and Bert and just about everybody else. But I remember you, Bruce, at Channel 10 reading the news with. You must have been very poor. They couldn't have paid you a lot because you used to have the back out of your jacket.
Yes, I did. I had that back intentionally ripped out of my jacket, and some Velcro put across like a bra strap, which kept my lapels straight and very much to the surface. But I remember when Normie came back to Essendon Airport, and I was at, I think, KZ or XY, and I
think you were an XY at the time. I remember quite well.
And I walked out to that tarmac because there was no undercover at that time. You just walked up to the plane, and I had a helmet with an aerial on it, which went back to our traffic car.
I still have the picture is so vivid in my mind. I thought, my God, Bruce, what are you doing?
That's touchdown for the Vietnamese Flight 489 from Hanoi and wherever it came from. And here comes Normie now. Well, up against me was Stan Rofe, who was furious that I had this helmet with the aerial. So his hand went up to my head, and he ripped the aerial off, so it couldn't be heard anymore.
I was under the impression he had a pair of scissors which cut the antenna lead.
But you were huge. You were really big news in that. No one bigger in Australia than you, Normie.
Perhaps, but, the industry was big in those days, we don't have that sort of industry in Australia today, which is a great shame, but perhaps it'll turn around. We'd love to see it. We've got so much wonderful talent. I saw a lot of it today. We did a full run of Normie the musical, and these young kids, oh my God, glad they weren't around when I was young, because I wouldn't have had a show. They're so good.
Are you in that production?
I play Harold Holt.
Yes, right. I thought you were wonderful in that telly-movie on Harold Holt's disappearance.
Well, thank you very much. I did a lot of work on that. I was very fortunate to spend a lot of my acting training with Hayes Gordon, and he gave me a lot of tools to work with. But I also had a terrific director, Peter Butts, who had he was really intent on getting things right, and we worked together a lot on the background for Harold Holt. Harold was a very interesting man. I don't think he was really cut out to be Prime Minister. He was a very likeable, lovable man, and he loved being liked.
Yeah, and of course, who could forget your memorable performance in Les Miserables?
You never can, though, Phil. You always bring that up, and it was such a delight. Some of the people who came to see that show, like yourself, who came back after the show, that really impressed me, were people like Ernie Carroll, who was, of course, Ozzy Ostrich. And Ernie came backstage one night, and he just said how much he enjoyed the show, and to me, that was a huge, big circle, because he used to draw cartoons of Susan Gay Anderson and Ozzy Ostrich for the Tarak's Happy Show when I was just a kid myself.
Yes, of course.
And to be validated by somebody like Ernie, for me, was one of the great things that you could ever achieve in your life, as a performer.
Yes, but going right back to the early days of television, there's no doubt Graham Kennedy took a shine to you, and that must have helped your career along a bit as well.
Well, yeah, and Graham was, he was an incredibly affable person, he was an incredibly likable person, considering the sort of stress that he was under, both, an ego stress that I see quite a lot in show business. I saw it with Don Lane. I saw it with Ernie when he was doing his Tonight Show. I saw it with Bert. I saw it with a lot of people who copied those shows. When their ego came under stress because so much depended on their performance, and the people who it seemed to not matter that much to were people like Noel Ferrier and those like Mary Hardy, who just almost had a disdain for the fame that came out of their brilliance from their public performance.
Yes, that's very well put. I think Frank Thring had a bit of that in him too.
I think he was a definitive person in that sort of area. You had to go along with Frank, because when he was in a room, there was no one else.
Yes, absolutely. His ego was out of control, wasn't it?
It was just quite amazing. I'm quite sure that when he appeared in those Charlton Heston biblical movies, that Charlton Heston might have struggled. That's probably why he created the.
You're just breaking up a little bit there, Sadly. I wanted to ask you, do you keep in touch with any of your mates from the old bandstand days and your rock and roll days?
Oh, look, I tell you what, I just came back from a cruise, rocked the boat too, and on the cruise was Little Paddy, Lucky Star, Jade Hurley, Vicky Bell, Vicky Gardens, who else was on Marty Rome.
Yeah.
It was just a terrific cruise. It was like being on a ship for a week or so with old friends. It was just just a wonderful time.
Who got top billing?
Chubby Checker.
Where did you...
And then Normie.
Of course.
Where did you sail to?
We went out into the Pacific. We went to Vanuatu, to Portavila, and then we went to New Caledonia, to Nanea.
I was only thinking about the Western Front, where I've been a couple of times, and Phil once, which is a very awe-inspiring place to be. It's windswept paddocks of this of a magnitude of the war, particularly the First World War, and
the Somme.
Yes. Have you been to Gallipoli?
I've been 3 times, as a matter of fact, and I'm going again in 2015 on a cruise, which will be, I think, for me, the highlight cruise of my life. I've done 43 cruises so far.
Oh, that's good.
And this one in particular will be something very, very special, because it's a 36-day cruise out of Fremantle. Bert Newton will be on it, John Williamson, Ross Wilson, Daryl Braithwaite, Kate Sobrano. There will be that's just the entertainment, and then of course there will be a crew of historic lecturers who will give us a complete knowledge of exactly what went on for the Anzac convoy, which we are following. We go down from Fremantle down to Albany, and that's where the forming up place for the Anzac flotilla took place. And then we go across to Colombo, southern end of Sri Lanka, and then across through the Suez into the Mediterranean, and we do a number of ports there and end up at Gallipoli for the dawn service.
That will be magnificent, from the deck of that ship overlooking into that beach, floodlit on that occasion.
You know what's going to be so great about that is we will have a unique point of view. We'll be looking at Anzac Cove, exactly the same view that the Anzacs had when they were first being delivered to that place.
Of course.
And of course, the sun will be coming up. That'll be the sun that they'll see. Unfortunately, you see, what's happened is when they sighted the commemoration area at North Beach there, they put the dais right on the water's edge so that the throng, the 10,000 people who can fit on that space, will be looking at the dignitaries, who will then be the only people to look up at the heights and see the dawn breaking and the sun coming up over the heights and the Sphinx.
Of course, it'll be magnificent.
And we will see it from the ship. It's going to be just superb.
Yes, we've been promoting that already on 3AW. And I also wanted to promote Normie the Musical, coming to Scotch College November 23rd to December 1st in the Jeff McComas Theatre. I'm sure it'll be a great success for you, Normie.
Thanks very much. For me, I'm not so concerned about it, but I am concerned about it being successful for all the kids who have worked so hard. Especially the director Simon and the music director David, who have worked incredibly hard.
Yes.
The actors are they're just first class. They would get a spot on the West End or on Broadway.
Normie Rowe, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you soon also, Phil.
Please, Normie, thank you very much indeed for the memories and your involvement all those years ago.
Yes, so special of you to talk to us on November the 11th.